The FBI found the emails while investigating illicit messages sent to an underage girl by Clinton aide Huma Abedin's estranged husband and estranged guy, Anthony Weiner. Apparently, they found them while searching his laptop, and dear God, I hope they used tongs.
I read that as of yesterday, over 21 million votes have already been cast in the election. It's amazing to see millions of Americans with different points of view all joining together to get this election over with as soon as humanly possible. Get it over with.
After claiming the election is rigged, Donald Trump said at a rally last week that the country should, quote, just cancel the election and give it to Trump. And then on Friday, FBI Director James Comey said, okay.
As you've probably heard, the FBI is revisiting its investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails because some of them were found on Anthony Weiner's laptop. It's a real mess, and not because there's so many emails, just because they can't find anyone willing to touch Anthony Weiner's laptop.
Headlines and punchlines from last night as we tried to laugh through some very interesting times, reminding us all of the ancient Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. We want you to take this time to call us at 1-877-NEWSMAX. That's 1-877-639-7629. We'll get to the emails in a second. The topic we've been talking about heretofore is voting, specifically early voting. And on the telephone from Detroit, it is Tony. Tony, we welcome you to the program. Your take on early voting, sir.
Well, yeah, two things. One is if this would have came out earlier, there'd have been a lot of different votes, okay? So I agree with you on the, states that can, revoke their, the right to vote on, their vote. But the thing is on part two is what Clinton did was an impeachable act, okay? And there's other people that are going to be involved on that many emails. Now, I've gone through this with other friends and stuff. We're voting Trump, and the thing is because we don't want this discussed, no more. And it's like this is going to be a breaking point for, the voting rights and for him,
Well, I hear you. You are summing up, Tony, what is going on in the country, and it is a concern. Because what has to happen is somebody has to get to 270 electoral votes, or the election goes to the House of Representatives. We don't know today, but as Tony is pointing out and trying to give voice to right there, you got a situation where it is conceivable. I don't think it's going to happen. I think enough votes have changed, and I think, quite frankly, we talked about it earlier, the hidden Trump vote, but there is a possibility that someone could get to 270 votes and spend maybe 18 months in office, because if the House and Senate do their constitutional duty and that person has done something impeachable in terms of emails affecting our national security, not to mention quid pro quo, regardless, even if she were pardoned by President Obama, a court of impeachment, which would be the United States Senate, is not a criminal court. It is a constitutional court, and you've got that going on. We're rejoined here on the anchor desk by former CIA analyst Lisa Ruth and former NYPD special investigator Michael Solomon. And you guys are from the law. So before we talk healthcare, let's just talk for a second about your impressions of what you have heard when you received the news Friday that the investigation was, quote, being reopened. Lisa Ruth, your reaction to that?
I guess I was speechless, but I think this whole election has left me speechless, so much of it, and it's back and forth. And I don't know why it was closed in the first place when it clearly was not done. And then you have this situation of it being reopened, and you have to admit, no matter which side you're on, it's bizarre the way it happened. It's so strange, this whole election, and I do think people just want it over. That said, I do think at this point we have a situation where we don't really know what's going on. And I think that from the point of the FBI, I don't think they owe it to the American people to tell us right now, except that because they did come forward and say something, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying it. I also think it's going to impact what people are thinking. In addition to Obamacare, there's a lot of things happening right now at the same time.
Well, let's understand, just so we put all the cards on the table. When I was serving in Congress and we heard that the feds had upped, quote, political corruption to like number 3 on their list, so they were taking a look at everybody in Congress. To be fair, some guys got in trouble, but it was interesting in the case of the then Speaker of the House, who didn't have legal trouble until after he'd served, Dennis Hastert. There was a report that there was some sort of investigation of Speaker Hastert. The Justice Department and the FBI broke with their protocol within 12 hours of the report to say, no, there's nothing going on here. But as a former special investigator, Michael Solomon, here's the thing that just screams to me, given the fact that Hilary was running the State Department, this has national security written all, it's like a blinking neon light to me. That is where the investigation is taking it. Would you agree with that?
As a former law enforcement officer and detective, I've got to tell you this right off the bat. Comey would not reopen this investigation unless he found something substantial. And from what I've seen, and I am only going by what I've heard from the press and what some of the reports are, apparently they went into Weiner's laptop and they were looking for stuff with him as a pedophile in his case, and suddenly somebody said, oh my God, look at this. And then they just turned it back over to Comey and said, look what we found. Now, do we know if it was any of those 30,000 missing emails, or was there anything in there that's an actual quid pro quo? But unless it's substantial, no law enforcement officer is going to reopen a case. So this has got to be substantial. Now, the other thing is that Hilary says, well, release it. Well, Comey can't release it, because if he does, the ends of justice will be defeated. You can't try this in the media or in the press. But she can release
Plus, we all know the press is in the tank for Hilary. So
she can release it if she has it, and they can and Huma can release it. And by the way, where is Huma? She's been in hiding for the last 3 days.
But the only problem I have with it is the last set. I have great colleagues, former FBI people, who told me there is no question that the volume and the content was very, very clear.
It's gross negligence.
That there was no question. I mean, we had people on the ground, not at Comey's level, but who were saying, this is done. There's so much evidence out there that there is nowhere to go. So when the initial investigation was quashed or turned, we were all flabbergasted, because we had talked to people in the field, on the ground, who had done the investigation, who said there's no question. So one of the interesting points now is, how is this different, or why is this different, or where are we going?
Ron Hosko, former assistant director of the FBI, was on this program yesterday, and he told us that he did not believe it was a situation where field agents and senior officials were threatening to leave that brought up this second bite at the apple. This was Comey's decision himself. Taking those words, here's my take on it. You know, the joke used to be when I was on the Ways and Means Committee that it's horribly politically incorrect. Let me apologize ahead of time, but it's fairly tame. You never meet a one-handed economist, because everybody would come to testify. They'd put out their scenario, and then they'd offer a disclaimer. On the other hand, now if you notice, and perhaps you've done this in briefings too, it's not so much a sin of the bureaucracy or the bureaucrats, but you call in the experts, and they give you their best advice, but they feel compelled to offer a different thing. And quite frankly, they gauge who they're briefing.
Sure.
So Comey has been a part of this bureaucracy long enough that even as he said, hey, Hilary, this is not, he said, no, she had emails. No, this is in direct contradiction of what she said in that UN press conference. He stopped short of the prosecution. Now this second bite at the apple came up, so to speak. Not so much to please the agents or anybody at the FBI, but to deal with his own conscience. Apparently at 6'8" now, he is standing tall because we had the report. And I will tell you what, not only the first Attorney General in the Obama administration, but this current Attorney General ought to be put in the Hall of Shame. They are without doubt the worst presumptive law enforcement officials I've seen in our history. And Loretta Lynch tried to stare down Comey, and he just came back with a question, what? You want me to stop? You think I'm going to stop this? And so he came forward. With that kind of scenario, there we are, Lisa, back to rotten to the core. And I'm sorry, we've only got a few seconds, about 30 seconds, very quickly.
Yeah, it is, and absolutely rotten to the core. And I'm going to throw something out. I heard rumors are interesting, but there's a new rumors percolating that Comey may not be around for very long. I'd be curious what you guys think about that.
Well, he serves at the pleasure of the president. We heard about the Saturday Night Massacre with Dick Nixon back in the 70s. Of course, they would call it here, given the alphabet networks and their cable cousins, they would call it a move for justice. We know just how much a barnyard excrement that is. Lisa, Ruth, Michael Solomon, thanks to you. When we come back, Dan Stein, what's going on our border? More illegals are coming. We'll have more after this.